Excellent. I think we're live now. I can see people are joining, which is amazing. Hello, everyone. Greetings from the UK. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Degina Weatherill, and I'm the Director of Recruitment at Uni UK Division, a company of global university systems overseeing international students recruitment for a number of our UK partner universities. And today I'm extremely excited to talk about one of our premium partner university, Canterbury Christ Church University, specifically covering popular business school within Canterbury Christ Church University, based in beautiful Kent in Canterbury. You can see Canterbury in my background. And I'm joined today by colleagues from the university. We have Richard, who is the Director of Postgraduate at Canterbury Christ Church Business School. And we have Stephen, who oversees International Students Recruitment and Partnership at the university. I'm also joined by my colleagues from in uni, Kasha, Chandni, and Anand, helping us to run this webinar. Just few housekeeping rules before we start. You're all on mute. If you'd like to ask any questions, feel free to do so. Just pop them into the Q&A section. So that's Q&A section rather than chat section, and we will take them from there. Other than that, sit back and enjoy, and we hope you find this webinar really useful and inspiring if you're a student and planning to come to study at Canterbury Christ Church University soon. Also, a recording and presentation will be sent to you later on as well. So it's over to you, Richard. Thank you. I can see you're already sharing your screen. We can see it good. So yeah, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Many thanks to Degina. Hello, yes, my name is Richard McManus. I'm currently the Interim Section Director for Postgraduate and Professional, and I'm also Director of Research Development at Christ Church Business School. The first of those means I look after the postgraduate talk provision, and the second of those means I look after the postgraduate research provision. But importantly, if you're here for undergraduate, I also teach quite a lot on the undergraduate as well. Yeah, so we're here to try and talk about all the potential courses in the business school, both postgraduate and undergraduate. A bit of housekeeping, which I think Degina has already gone through, so please keep your microphone on mute. If you want to ask a question, use Q&A, not the chat. I'm not sure if I'm meant to be tracking that. If I am, then let me know. And then the session is being recorded and it will be pinged to you by magic. Okay, so who are we? Who is Canterbury Christ Church University? Our mission is inspired by Church of England Foundation to pursue excellence in higher education, transforming individuals, creating knowledge, enhancing communities, and building sustainable futures. And I think really that all of that speaks to me and my 10 years experience at the university. But I think the key thing to kind of get across in sort of thinking about where I see the university and kind of my role in the university and my role kind of looking after certain courses within the business school is that idea of pursuing excellence in higher education and what higher education might mean. So for me, higher education is all about sort of self-development and becoming more reflective and more aware and sort of engaging with these ideas. And certainly at a postgraduate level, I think that's super important, that a lot of the learning is kind of coming from us as individuals, as reflection and building and kind of growing. And really, I see a lot of my job is trying to facilitate that kind of open self-learning, peer-to-peer learning through lecturers, and sort of seeing that diversity, I guess, of how people reach those higher levels of education. If we're training robots, then that's quite easy, but we're not training robots. We're trying to sort of create creative critical thinkers who kind of engage with these topics and these ideas in a way that sort of allows them to be independent and therefore sort of more employable and hopefully have more enjoyable lives as well outside of sort of professionalism. But yeah, importantly, it's all about transformation and kind of how we best go about doing that. In terms of postgraduate courses, we have predominantly taught courses and predominantly full-time taught courses. And then importantly, what we offer is a little bit to what I was trying to talk about in the previous slide, but it's transformation, but it's how that transformation comes about, which I think is the key thing here. So for me, at least, when I was doing my master's, the most important thing was that community, that sort of peer-to-peer support. That's how I did most of my learning in my master's, because it was just the way in which I could spend more of my time with my friends than I did my lecturers. But also it was that sort of shared experience, I suppose, like that learning through a shared experience. It's one of the problems of a lecturer is sort of understanding how understanding something, going through something for the first time when we might have been through it for, at least tens of times maybe. And I think that's what we try and facilitate most, really, is that sense of community, that sort of peer-to-peer support across what is quite a large and international student body on the postgraduate taught courses. And like I say, like that, to me, sort of reflecting on what I wanted to kind of get across today was the key kind of thing. How do we facilitate learning in lots of different ways? We the sort of goal in doing that is building a better future. And like I say, from my side as an academic, I think just being critical and creative thinkers is important in and of itself. But obviously in the business school, we are trying to sort of increase productivity of an economy, increase productivities of individuals, make people more employable, and kind of sort of transform communities through this kind of development of individuals and development of communities within it. And we work a lot with partnerships, both domestically in the UK and internationally as well. So these numbers grow each day, maybe not quite each day, but yeah, so we've got approximately 15,000 students. In the back of my mind, I feel like it might be more, and about 3/4 of them are full-time, and certainly the majority of people, the majority of students on the courses in the business school are full-time. Yeah. I'm just trying to doubt whether or not that's true, but it is true. Yeah. So our overall approach, like I say, I've been trying to sort of stress that throughout. But the business school international business programs, which I'll come on and describe in a moment, are designed to prepare you to develop a career towards management role, enabling you to address complex problems that face organizations in today's dynamic international business environment. And the objectives are broader in the sense of talking to those ideas of personal transformation and development. But I think ultimately, if we start out with that sort of objective, that can kind of be the kind of orientation point around which the rest of our work is kind of performed to some extent. According to recent, I think the most up-to-date version of these statistics, employers are increasingly looking for ways to distinguish between candidates, and therefore it's sort of the challenges on us, therefore, as a business school and a university, to think about how we can facilitate that distinguishingness, that kind of unique, not quite uniqueness, I suppose, but that ability to demonstrate something different in employability. And that's sort of what we're focusing on. Like I say, there are more sort of broader periphery goals, but they all kind of feed towards this one kind of general aim of higher education, which is to become critical, creative thinkers that sort of can take those skills and apply them in many different contexts. Within the context of the business school, we're looking to do that within sort of thinking about problem solving within organizations and in the areas of management and so on. But more broadly, hopefully we can take these ideas in all sorts of pursuits in our lives. This is the most up to date of the statistics. That these statistics are very highly sought after. And most recently, Canterbury Christ Church University ranked 3rd in the UK for graduates going into employment after finishing their degree. And that's a very complicated survey technique where graduates have to be phoned relentlessly until they answer their phone to say whether they're in employment. So it's a really kind of prestigious kind of mark, really. Everybody's very proud. Okay, so in terms of the courses we hold within the business school at a postgraduate level, come on and talk about undergraduate level a little later on. We hold 3 main courses at a postgraduate level, at least at taught, and 3 only courses. Don't know why I said main. MBA International, MSc International Business, and Tourism and Events Management. In terms of what the difference is, there is an awful lot of overlap between the MBA and the MSc. I'll show you what that means in practice, but in my mind, whereas the MSc is more focused towards academic pursuits, and sort of the kind of end kind of project that you'll work on that sort of counts double all your other modules is an academic report. The MBA is orientated around sort of taking those ideas and turning them into a business, or at least a business plan. So the sort of final project with respect to the business, with respect to the MBA, sorry, is completing a business plan as opposed to an academic report. There's a lot of overlap there, both in terms of the differences and in terms of the non-differences. And I think it's just the kind of mind frame of what you're going for in the end. It is something that it's good to reflect on now in terms of, you know, what is your objective, what is your reason for wanting to study. And I think that should be driving all decisions at this sort of stage. But effectively, there is quite a lot of overlap in those two, but the kind of distinguishing point, I think, is hopefully quite clear. MBA is looking for a sort of conclusion that is business orientated towards starting your own business, or sort of more directly sort of going into something quite like your own enterprise. That's what I was looking for. Whereas MSc is a bit more academic and thinking about these things from an academic perspective. Tourism and events management is a completely separate course, and it's sort of much more sort of orientated towards the sort of practical skills within tourism and events management. Let me flesh that out a little bit more. So the highlighted bits on these slides represent the differences between the MBA International on the left-hand side and the MSc Business, International Business, sorry, on the right-hand side. And you see effectively there's what we call 60 credits. It's 180 credit course, so a third of the course is differentiated. And really, we can start at the bottom of the slide and kind of work out the differences. Whereas in the MBA, you're sort of developing this business plan at the end of the course. In the MSc, the idea is you develop a more academic dissertation. There can be an awful lot of overlap between those two, depending on your preferences, but that's the sort of core distinction. And then how you develop that is by using all the modules and the learning from everything else that you studied, but also in terms of thinking about the research methods or the market research, sort of how you go about finding the evidence base for whatever your final project is. That module as well is slightly sort of orientated towards that. The idea that you know, the focus is ever so slightly different, not massively different, but the focus is ever so slightly different. And therefore, yeah, that's the key distinction, right? Working towards a dissertation in the MSc, whereas we're working towards a business plan in the MBA. And then a lot of the sort of business ideas with respect to things like strategy, economics, finance, entrepreneurship, innovation, and so on, marketing, human resource management, and employability, a lot of them are shared, but then how we then sort of funnel that thinking is sort of is the distinction between the MSc and the MBA. And that's a sort of general idea. Yes. And then, I don't know, is there anything else to add? I don't think so, but obviously we can pick up if there are specific questions about this in the Q&A. Then in terms of tourism and events management, like I say, it's completely separate, right? So it's taught within the business school. So it is sort of within the remit, but it is sort of separate from the MBA and the MSc. And like I say, it's much more orientated around tourism and events management, surprisingly enough. So we're looking at event design and production, research methods. You'll note here that the conclusion in term 3 is a dissertation. So it's sort of following that chain from before, and the research methods is shared with the MSc. So it's sort of that idea that we're kind of working our way towards the conclusion of a dissertation. Then we've got resource management rather than necessarily human management, which we focus on in the other two courses. This is more broadly resource management. Then we have modules on sustainability and an applied consultancy project. So a little bit like a business plan, if you like, where it's a much more practical experience. But in this case, it's a real practical experience, whereas in a business plan, it might be a hypothetical business that you're thinking about developing. And then there is a choice of modules, just one choice between two modules in tourism and events management, which is either visitor management or creative destination management. So you can see it's not too dissimilar from really thinking, in my mind, it's like the MSc, but the MSc in international business, forgive me, but orientated around tourism and events, and therefore sort of giving it much more of a kind of specific focus as opposed to the more general and broader MSc International. It's still concluding with that kind of academic dissertation as opposed to a business plan, but the kind of focus, the ideas are kind of being orientated towards a very specific industry, whereas with the MBA and MSc, we're not sort of pinning down an industry. We're being a bit more broad and a bit more flexible in that respect. Okay, yeah, so sort of how we teach, hopefully the sort of preface, the sort of start and the sort of message throughout is sort of got to the kind of philosophy we have with our teaching and the sort of emphasis we've got in the teaching in terms of being able to sort of develop multiple networks for your learning, both, you know, with the academic staff, with professional services staff as well, plenty of support with respect to sort of transition to maybe UK academia, how to prepare for essays, how to do research and so on. And then also internal network, sort of informal networks, sort of peer-to-peer, and also just self-reflection and sort of trying to develop that sort of critical thinking within yourself. We have what is sometimes referred to as blended or flipped classroom. So we tend to do sort of the start of the week, a kind of 1 hour directed study, kind of prompts for your learning within that week, within a given module, within a given area. And then we build on that through the rest of the week when we kind of get together in a room and start discussing and debating some of these issues. The idea really is that at postgraduate level, at least, and really at undergraduate level, but more so at postgraduate level, these ideas are discussed, right? So we flip the classroom in the sense that, you know, the learning and the kind of reading and the sort of idea generation from an internal perspective is happening at the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the, not quite the end of the week, but during the middle bit of the week, we come back together and sort of discuss our reflections and our thoughts on whatever the topic is, and so on. And that's what we mean by a flipped classroom. So yeah, so the seminar is sort of where we come together and discuss it, and the lecture is the sort of beginning of the week kind of what we call directed study, you know, so someone like myself sort of walking through how they would approach thinking about these topics and kind of giving you some suggested reading and so on. Quite a lot of group work. That's very common, I think, of a lot of MBAs, but like say, we really emphasize this idea of finding different ways for you to learn, you know, academic support, group support, peer-to-peer support, and hopefully developing that sort of internal critical thinking and that internal creative thinking as well. Workshops and discussions around those, and then when you conclude your studies, either in the MBA with the business plan or the MSc and the dissertation, in either of the two MScs, tourism and events management and international business, you're then sort of allocated a sort of supervisor or an advisor, depending on what word you like in that case, who's sort of it's kind of hopefully by this stage you're sort of creating your own ideas and creating your own reflections and thinking on these ideas, and a supervisor or advisor is there to sort of guide you sort of seamlessly through the sort of conclusion of your course. Yeah, I think that's what I want to say. In terms of success stories, I think the students get a lot out of it, and well, of course I should say that, but in particular I think they do value the kind of flexibility and openness and kind of this idea of trying to promote different ways of learning to create more sort of fuller reflections, fuller thoughts, but also sort of creating these sort of mechanisms within our own brain to sort of solve problems, you know. I think that's really what I got out of my masters, and what other colleagues and students I speak to get out of theirs, is just that sort of, it is higher thinking, right? Higher education is meant to lead to higher levels of thinking, and it's how we go about doing that. And certainly I think the students I speak to, at least, unless they don't show me the unhappy ones, students I speak to really appreciate that kind of perspective. I think we also do try and sort of think about the practicalities of living in the UK. So you know, at the moment, at least, we have all our sort of seminars, all the sort of face-to-face content within Tuesday to Thursday. Students almost exclusively only come in on 2 of those days instead of all 3 of those days, and then that way Friday to Monday sort of offset. There is some directed learning, you know, we still want you to learn in that stage, in that part of the week, but it gives a chunk of time for the potential other pursuits and other commitments. But yeah, so I think students appreciate both the kind of academic nature of the course and the sort of the support we give there, but also the sort of considering the diversity and the perspectives of postgraduate international students and trying to sort of in the more practical sense make your lives easier. Chloe has a quote here. Chloe is actually now she's actually teaching, she's graduated and is now a PhD student, and actually provides more support for students who have finished as well. I learned a wealth of knowledge and made lifelong friends too. I was given both the freedom, sort of like I'm sort of saying, with the research topic, as well as advice on improvements and weaknesses, and I cannot express how amazing my tutors were to work with. And like I say, Chloe's come on to do a PhD with us, working with the same tutor that she worked with on her MSc. She's an MSc student, so working with the same person who supervised her for her MSc, and then taking that on to further education. This degree was perfect mix of guidance and independence, as I've been trying to sort of emphasize, and I would recommend it to anybody wanting to expand their knowledge of the business world. Yeah, so like I say, I think it's going to appeal to a student that sort of wants to sort of eventually lead to sort of graduating as a sort of free, critical and creative thinker, especially in the context of international business, but more broadly, just in general, just having that capacity to be self-reflective and really engage with whatever topics kind of interest you, either professionally or personally. There is a lot of other support, so I tend to focus on the academic, but there's a program effectively of support that is given to students on any of our postgraduate courses and any of our undergraduate courses, of different resources outside the school but within the university to sort of provide that provide additional kind of components that you might want to do. So there's Careers and Enterprise app. You can get one-to-one sort of appointments with these guys. They sit in the library, and you can, you know, really focus on your employability. You can focus on your sort of academic kind of English or sort of academic writing and so on and so forth. These kind of generic skills that we want all students to have and to develop throughout all courses at the university. We also have Unitemps, which is a kind of place where temporary jobs are kind of promoted, sometimes within the university, but sometimes outside the university, and grad force as well, which is bringing in local employers around the county and sort of you know, finding jobs for other people. Stephen, you've presented yourself. Did you want to say something? No, okay, let me continue then, sorry. Yes, so moving on to the undergraduate, I mean, there are some Q&As. Should I just complete and then we go to the Q&As, or should I do some postgraduate? I'll take a lead from Stephen's face.
I think we'll just probably carry on through with the undergraduate.
Fantastic.
First,
okay. Yeah.
And then we'll do all the Qs afterwards.
Fantastic. Okay, good. I just wanted a break from talking. So yes, so in terms of the undergraduate, like I say, it is slightly different, but not, the philosophies are kind of the same, I suppose. The kind of significance is, though, that there's a more variety of courses in terms of sort of specialisms within business. That because there's more variety, it means the courses are a bit smaller, but that can be a bit deceptive in the sense that different specialisms study with different specialisms on different modules. So even though the courses are smaller, sometimes the kind of communities in which you learn are still as big, but they sort of change depending on the nature of the course. And I think the expectations sort of like I think really in all of higher education, what we're trying to do is sort of develop the critical and creative thinkers. But the expectation of where we start and when we end is sort of different at an undergraduate level, as one would naturally kind of consider. But yes, like I say, so on the left-hand side here, we have the variety of our sort of specialisms within business, but you can see on the right-hand side, we have a common first year. And what we mean by that common first year is for all the courses on the left-hand side, almost all the same modules are taken on the right-hand side. So there is a bit of specialism within the first year, but the sort of idea here is that you can come in and not not necessarily at the end of the year, but you can, it depends on what you want to change, but you can come in thinking I want to be, for me, doing a BSc in economics, for example, but then actually sort of through the process of going through the first year and kind of developing, understanding a bit more, you might change those preferences. And it's not possible to change from anyone to anyone, but the common first year is sort of providing that it's providing a bigger community. If everybody's sort of studying almost the same modules, there is a little bit of differentiation at the margins, but also it's allowing for some changes in course titles, and obviously changes in course titles then filter through to the sort of modules and the things you study. Only a little bit. Stephen, you got your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, just to add to that kind of common first year, the element of the multiple programs being involved in the same classroom, it gives rise to a greater variety of understanding, helps students develop those peer-to-peer networks. Richard spoke quite passionately earlier about how he learned a majority of his learning from his friends by being in those peer-to-peer networks. And that's not a natural thing just to walk into the UK and know how to do that straight away. It's part of our UK education system through GCSEs and A-levels and international baccalaureate, etc., that's already somewhat embedded when you get to university as a UK student. But for international students, I think it's a fantastic approach that the business school have taken to have this common first year, because you can sit in your classroom and meet people that are doing business management or marketing or human resource management, and they've all got a slightly different interpretation of where the content will take them with their career, with their aspirations, and with their conversations. So having that common first year and being in a classroom with a variance of demographic, a variance of experience, and really creating those networks from day one is such a valuable opportunity. I can't stress enough how great it is to be able to create those networks and not be limited by the 10 people that might be on your course.
Exactly. And I think obviously a distinction, which I guess goes without saying, but is something that just went through my mind, is an undergraduate course is 3 years, whereas a postgraduate course is 1 year. There's a lot more scope for us to change, I think, as individuals on an undergraduate course, because it's a longer period, and therefore sort of seeing that diversity of view, I think, is quite important. And I think it hopefully is, from my perspective, it's quite easy to find your home. So even though like peer-to-peer learning and working in groups can be somewhat intimidating, I think the diversity of the student base and the diversity of the the people with whom you might study means that you can find where you feel most comfortable, and sort of developing those skills and so on. Okay, then there's lots on this slide. So BSc Business Management, I think, is the biggest course in the school, but it's all much of a muchness. They're approximately a similar size, but also what happens with the BSc in Business Management is it's also the course that other courses borrow from the most, in terms of the sort of module and the makeup of the design, and the focus is not too dissimilar from MSc and MBA International Business. But now the kind of perspective is, to an undergraduate audience as opposed to a postgraduate audience, and the sort of expectations of where you start from as a student and where you end up is slightly different, right? But it's still trying to emphasize this sort of higher levels of thinking, critical and free thinking. Yep. And I think it's similar but different, right? It's I guess it's more structured, and you're sort of graduating with more freer and critical thinking, whereas in the postgraduate it's much more kind of expectation is maybe the wrong word, but kind of the sort of philosophy is to try and have that from as early as possible, whereas in the undergraduate, it's three-year program, and it's sort of much more sort of structured, and then eventually you're sort of becoming free thinkers, ideally as soon as possible, but in general these things might take a bit of time.
It's definitely our most popular pathway, isn't it? I think
yes.
As a university, for those students that are aspirational and looking to go into the MBA, set up their own business, or go into the academic MSc International Business, but are coming from their own high school level qualifications overseas. BSc Business Management is definitely the most popular pathway we see. Students coming in to get that real theoretical grounding in business, And I'm really happy that I work at a university where we marry theory and practice together. We don't sit you in a classroom and just lecture at you for 18 hours a week. That practical element is embedded throughout our teaching. The links to local small enterprises, for example, the practical elements in the course. But it's definitely that pathway that takes students through kind of creating the critical being, the analytical thought, the reflection, building on that kind of experience that progresses you through to a postgraduate MBA, MSc International Business. It's why we're focusing on the BSc Business Management. It is our most popular undergraduate program. And it's definitely one that gives a very clearly defined career path into that postgraduate study as well, which does set you apart in the market and really enhances that employability element.
Exactly, and it's particularly, it is the most popular overall, but it's also the most popular with international students as well. And then sort of feeding off Stephen's reflections on working with business, today there's an expo. I never really know what an expo is. It must be short for something, but there's a sort of science and technology expo just east of Canterbury in Sandwich, where I used to live, at a sort of industrial park, which the university has quite strong links with, and the business school has quite strong links with. And we organised for a field trip of students to go there to sort of have that opportunity to network and sort of take what they're learning and sort of think about it in a more applied context. So here's the modules that most students will take. Well, they'll take it if they do business management, but you'll do most of this if you take other things as well, because of that common first year approach. So you see there's quite a lot of overlap there with respect to the sort of themes of the postgrad, and effectively it's just trying to go through those core areas of I nearly said economics, core areas of business to sort of develop that sort of foundation from which to then sort of go into more specialist areas in your second and third year. I think that's quite clear. And then the teaching is similar but not identical to the postgraduate, right? Where the postgraduate is sort of emphasizing more free thought and more discussion around that. You know, you're coming in with more developed qualifications and more developed kind of personalities, so therefore, you know, we can rely on that a little bit in the postgraduate. In the undergraduate, there is much more sort of structuring in terms of sort of developing those skills eventually. Sort of that's the idea here. So it will look similar, but the kind of, I think the flavor of an undergraduate session will be slightly different from postgraduate session, but the philosophies are very similar in terms of what we're striving to achieve through the 3-year undergraduate program. And you can, but you don't have to, sort of reflecting on the what we discussed with respect to postgraduate, you can do a project at the end of your 3rd year, and that project can either be not necessarily a business plan, but you can actually develop a business plan in a separate module, but you can take on a dissertation type, an academic dissertation, and there's also possibilities to take on a sort of live project, a bit like we saw in the tourism and events MSc. Okay, so I tried to have it a bit earlier. Questions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reflections.
Brilliant. I think Dagina's going to come back in now and manage the questions for us. Is that right, Dagina?
Yes, apologies, my computer just got a bit frozen, as it happens. Thank you so much, Richard. Really, really informative session and very, very useful information. Let's jump into questions. I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about tourism and event management postgraduate degree you mentioned, and whether you've noticed, especially post-pandemic, whether there is more interest and more opportunities for students and graduates in these industries.
Yeah, I think it's growing. It's definitely growing in terms of student numbers, which I guess is a good indication of that. And it's currently going through the process of being what we call internally revalidated, which means effectively we're sort of looking at the design. I mean, we always look at the design, but it's a much more sort of structural component of that. Yeah, I think it's one of the areas that the academics look into as well. Naturally, academics who work in tourism and events have a bias towards wanting the industry to succeed, but it's something in which, as researchers, it's something which they talk about quite a lot. And there's one of the more leading researchers in that section is currently sort of outwardly promoting a group of academics from a number of universities on the future of tourism and on the future of the industry more broadly. So I think numbers possibly did fall a little bit during the pandemic, when tourism and event industry in particular was hit. But since then has really increased. Stephen.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, Dagina, and completely agree with you, Richard. I was fortunate enough a couple of weeks ago to have a conversation with the new program director for the MSc Tourism Management, and we were talking about the interesting shift that happened post-pandemic. So I've worked in international recruitment for approaching many years. I'm not going to say a number because it gives away my age, but no, I've worked in international recruitment for over 15 years now. And pre-pandemic, postgraduate tourism programs were very specifically regionalized. You would see large numbers of applications from places in the Goa region, from places like Sri Lanka, especially coastal regions, and those areas that already had very thriving tourism industry. It was a program where students living within a region where tourism was very predominant would go away, study, and return with qualifications. Post-pandemic, we're seeing a shift in the type of applications that universities, specifically in the UK, are receiving, where we're starting to see migratory students. So applicants that intend to work in tourism industry somewhere in the world, and they have a destination in mind, but it's not their point of origin, it's their destination. So we're actually starting to see tourism programs as part of tourism, which is interesting. The theory becomes the practice. They're starting their tourism journey before they go to work in the industry. And they intend to work in luxurious, amazing locations around the world. So there's no better place to start than Canterbury, obviously, which is luxurious as it is. But yeah, there has been a shift in the application trend.
It's really interesting. Thank you, Stephen. And yes, I agree. I think post-pandemic, it's kind of like a travel revenge currently, where people go on holidays a bit more, they travel around the country as well. So you can kind of see the vacancies, more vacancies available, even within the UK. I don't even mention the luxury destinations abroad as well. And like you mentioned, it's a great opportunity for students not only to obviously get the theory, get the degree itself, but also to experience the world and to gain experience in various places in the world, which is amazing. And it's great to see that. Yeah.
Just one more thing. Little bit of a shift, but on the tourism side, Canterbury is a really interesting destination for studying tourism because it is a tourist destination itself. So there's a lot of the theory in practice within our city. Our hotels are normally operating at about 97% occupancy the entire year round. We have the Canterbury Cathedral, which receives over 1 million tourists a year. The city is a tourism hub. So being able to study tourism in a tourism hub, away from kind of your standard glossy pictured beach brochures, is quite an interesting theory, because you see tourism through all sorts of different elements in the city. You see kind of positive tourism where they're coming for holidays, but you also see specific activity tourism. We have Kent and the southeast coast, which has sports, water sports, we have sports tourism, we have live business sessions, everything down here. So it is a multi-tourist destination. I'm just conscious we're getting away from kind of the MBA, MSc International Business there. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
All right, it's really, really interesting. Thank you. Very good information to have. Right, so let's jump into some of the questions from attendees. I can see some of those Stephen already answered to, so thank you for that. In terms of the CAS issuance question, so the university has already started issuing CASs as of this week, which is amazing news. So we do recommend students to provide your outstanding documents. If you haven't done so, arrange your consultation session. If you have already received unconditional offer from the university, please ensure you book your pre-CAS interview at the soonest, because it's getting busier as we speak and the slots are getting booked up very, very quickly. So please book that as soon as possible. I can see there were questions around the deadline. What's currently happening is the university is receiving a huge volume of applications. So the deadlines is something which is fluid. It can change at any point of time, depending how soon students start obviously submitting their CAS requests. So we may get to the situation where by the end of April, the university has already received so many CAS requests, and we would obviously need to process them also. You would need to really start providing your CAS request, and if you haven't arranged your deposit payments or any outstanding documents at the soonest to avoid disappointment. And I think it's kind of applicable across the sector now. Some universities already stopped accepting applications as well. We still do accept applications, but you need to be mindful that you need to provide a full package of documents. You need to book a consultation session with my team at the soonest, and you need to then book your pre-CAS interview once your unconditional offer letter is issued and proceed further with the process. There is a question around the scholarship. Yes, Canterbury Christ Church University offers competitive prices already. In addition, it also offers £1,500 scholarship, which is great saving for students. And that's applicable for all programs they offer. So you will see it within your offer letter as well. Okay, initial deposit. So currently the very minimum deposit for undergraduate and postgraduate programs is £5,000. However, for the standalone foundation program, it's a full fee prior to CAS. But across all the programs, if you do actually cover a full tuition fee prior to applying for CAS, it saves you on showing those outstanding funds for the first year of your tuition fees within your bank account for CAS purposes, which obviously makes your life a bit easier. Did you want to add anything on that, Stephen?
Yeah, just a bit of clarity there. The full fee is for the international foundation year. So if you're shorter, if you have acceptable English but you're short on your academic entry quals and you need foundation in business prior to your undergraduate, that would be the £5,000 as well. It's the international foundation year, which is full fee prior to CAS.
Exactly. So that's a standalone foundation. If you are applying for an integrated foundation, so that's foundation which comes as on a joint CAS, foundation plus bachelor's degree, you can still go with the regular 5,000, the minimum CAS deposit, but obviously you need to meet the academic requirement and the English requirement as well. There was a question around English requirements or English waivers. So depending where you come from, there might be some qualifications or some boards, for example, in India, which could be considered as a proof of English if you have achieved a certain grade. For example, Canterbury Christ Church University has recently added Kerala board to the list of English qualifications that are being accepted if students do achieve 70% in English. So please speak to my business development team or your relevant education advisor or your agency to find out more on your specific case. Other than that, the university accepts a great choice of English tests, so you can opt for one of those. Obviously IELTS is one of the most popular ones, but they also accept other English tests like Oxford International, Language Cert, which also can be taken online or on campus at the center, Pearson and other English tests. So do check with your relevant advisor and they can help you on that. Okay. Let's see if there are any questions related to business school specifically. I can see there is a question around the study gap. Just to reiterate, the great news, I guess, about Canterbury Christ Church University doesn't discriminate on age or any study gap. It's considered on individual basis. So we do have students who are fresh graduates straight off the school or from the university applying for postgraduate degrees in business or other subjects, or we have also students with extensive work experience. The main thing is you need to justify any study gap within your CV, provide relevant reference letter, and obviously explain in your personal statement what you've been doing since your latest qualification. But postgraduate degrees at Canterbury Christ Church University we've covered today, including MBA, do not actually require to have a work experience, so you can be a fresh graduate as well. Okay, let's see. There is a question around campuses for business school. Richard, if you'd like to maybe elaborate a little bit more, where Canterbury Christ Church Business School located, and anything else you would like to mention around it.
Yeah, sure. So the business school is located on the main campus. So if you can see the image that's in front of us, that's the canteen that we can see behind the students there, and the business school is sort of to the right. Yeah, so it's on the main Canterbury campus. It's probably 5 minutes walk from Canterbury Cathedral, which is behind Dagina right now. And yeah, so it's with all the facilities there. We do have a presence. It's not particularly a campus, but we have a presence, like I say, in an industrial park. I don't know if that sounds romantic enough, but a science park sounds better. On the east coast, sort of 10 miles east, I'm guessing, not terribly far away, in Sandwich, and that's where we get a lot of our kind of industrial links and so on. We do teach over there, not on these courses, but we teach some businesses over there in terms of business specific skills on government kind of related schemes. And then we do have a presence in Medway, which is sort of halfway between Canterbury and London and in Tunbridge Wells, but none of the actual teaching is there. It's just a way of us sort of having a presence throughout the whole of Kent, Kent being the county of the UK, sort of a section of the UK in which we're based, and it allows us to develop more links with industry and with other potential students. In terms of facilities, I can see a question there on facilities. Thinking about how best to sort of structure sort of answer around that, I think there's facilities sort of specifically within the school and within these programs that I can try and talk about, and then there's more generic facilities for everyone. I think one of the key facilities, I don't know if it can be defined as a facility, but is having that open communication and dialogue and connections with business. I think students do get a lot out of that. It's not a facility per se, but it's something outside the course which adds an awful lot of additional value to students, that ability to network and speak and work on live events. I think the other thing is it's the utilization of the facilities as well. So because of the prominence and because of the presence of international students within business school courses, there is much more of a link with the sort of university-wide facilities and trying to structure that as well. So certainly within the MSc and the MBAs, the postgraduate taught, shall we say, courses, there is a sort of, anybody can access the facilities at any time, but there is a sort of structure within which you could do that if you wanted to. Certainly when I was a student, I wasn't terribly good at doing things that were voluntary, and this is sort of trying to support it more directly by putting in this structure. Then other facilities, we talked a little bit about the employment ones within the slides. You know, that's really important and a real sort of emphasis within the university as a whole. And then library and kind of online facilities, you know, quite a lot going on there. And then, you know, I guess I haven't used this for years, but you know, sports all very close by, and sort of facilities, sort of traditional type facilities around there. Was there anything else you should be answering? Sorry.
No, that's great. And what I really love about Canterbury Christ Church University, it's all walkable. You can just walk around the campuses. It's all within easy reach.
Yeah, so it's a campus university, so it's all close together, but it's right next to the city. Canterbury itself is not massive, so we have that luxury of being both a campus and a city university, whereas sometimes you can get campuses that are out of town, so therefore don't have the connection with the city, and sometimes you can get not universities that are not campuses, but sort of buildings all over the city. Canterbury has the benefit of being both a campus-based university that is right next to the city.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great experience for students as well. It's a great way to also, be part of communities in Canterbury. And one of the reasons we also encourage students to book on campus accommodation, as opposed to obviously booking it elsewhere, is students would be, able to focus more firstly on studies. They don't need to worry about commute, or traveling, let's say, from London. Even though it's still within an hour, it's still expensive, or it can add extra time to your morning routine. So obviously we want students to avoid missing classes as well. And it's more expensive to live in London rather than living in Canterbury itself. And the university offers a number of on-campus accommodation options. We do encourage students to book those as early as possible, and ideally once you've received your CAS letter. So far we had very close to 100% visa success rate, and even if for any reason you have a visa rejection, the deposit, which is only £100+ for the accommodation, is refundable to you. So do secure your on-campus accommodation as early as possible to avoid disappointment. If you are coming with dependents, with family, obviously that's a separate story. You wouldn't be able to book on campus university accommodation because it doesn't cater for families, but you can find a number of private options. And again, it's something you would need to start booking earlier rather than later, because summer would be really, really busy for everyone. Another option, another thing I really like about Canterbury Christ Church University is there are canteens everywhere, so you never go hungry, which is obviously great for students. Well, it's definitely important for me. And as you walk around campus, you can see all different canteen options and all different food options available as well. Halal options also there, so students will find anything at Canterbury Christ Church University itself. Okay, that's great. Let's see. There is a question in regards with internships, placement opportunities, and if you can maybe elaborate a little bit on the support provided to students. I know it's obviously provided by the Career Services Department. I was lucky to meet them when I visited Canterbury Christ Church University. But if there is anything else you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, so on the undergraduate, with it being a 3-year course, there is the possibility of doing an internship. Well, we call it a placement. Where the distinction I'm making in my head is that it's for a whole year. So you do a placement between the 2nd and 3rd year. And with it being a 3-year course, that's something that you sort of develop over time. So you sort of think about what sort of placement you might do in the 1st year, and then the 2nd year is full of applications and so on. And then the idea being that you then return in what then becomes your 4th year for your 3rd year of study, as it were. Within the MSc and MBA, because it's just 1 year, that it doesn't lend itself to that. But what we do emphasize is the connections with business. So, for example, the field trip to Discovery Park and so on, where hopefully you're sort of developing those networks and kind of working towards whatever your preferences are, I suppose, in terms of sort of post-graduation employment and how you would like to, where you would like to work, and geographically where, and industrially wise where. So it's not as formal as in the undergraduate provision, but the kind of networks are trying to be there so that you can complete your studies within 1 year full time, and then you're sort of free to do whatever you want to do with the rest of your life, sort of thing.
Thank you. And I guess the great thing about securing a placement, it's a way to obviously start building relationship with a potential employer who, if they obviously like, if they want you to stay longer, they would be able to offer full-time employment. As we know, in the UK, the great thing is students can apply for post-study work visa, which is graduate route, for 2 years once they've successfully graduated with undergraduate or postgraduate degree, or 3 years if they completed PhD. So you can definitely benefit from the support that the university offers in terms of finding those placements, but also part-time jobs. I saw there was a question in regards to part-time jobs. So students are allowed to work part-time. Obviously, studies should be your priority number 1. But at the same time, having a part-time job, it does help to find new friends, I guess, not to be as homesick, and also to earn extra pocket money and to, I guess, build your communication skills as well. So international foundation students, so that's a standalone foundation, can work 10 hours per week, and then undergraduate and postgraduate students can normally work 20 hours per week during studies, and obviously more hours when they are on holidays. And as Stephen mentioned, obviously there are lots of opportunities nearby. There are lots of hotels, cafes, restaurants, shops in Canterbury. It's very, very touristic. It's always buzzing, and there are different vacancies available in Canterbury itself. So you don't necessarily have to go to big cities like London to secure a part-time job, or even some placement as well. Just speaking of the structure of the program, I can see there is a question in regards with MSc International Business, and those modules you mentioned, are they compulsory or optional, Richard?
So all modules are compulsory within the MSc and MBA International Business. And really it's to try and get that kind of, it's a broad topic, right? Business. It's to ensure that kind of depth of knowledge in a broad as possible range. With the tourism and events management, there is one optional choice. It's really hard at a postgraduate level to give too many options, and then at an undergraduate level as well. That there are more choices, but that's a 3-year course where there's a bit more flexibility around doing that. But yes, to answer the question directly, all are compulsory in the international business courses.
Thank you. And there is also a question, how are students graded for the postgraduate programs? So I guess they mean the assessment methods.
Sorry, I clicked too far on my slides and then my whole screen went crazy. And I couldn't find the unmute. So yeah, assessment methods tend to be, but not exclusively. We don't have any sort of exams, what I call exams, but different people call different things exams. We have quite a few presentations, which I think is quite natural for an MBA, sort of developing those sort of more different skills, sort of professional type skills. A little bit of group work, again, sort of trying to foster that peer-to-peer support and components, and then quite a lot of sort of practical, either hypothetical case studies or applied case studies within business. So I think the majority of the assessments, if we took it by sort of weight, is either written or presentational. No formal exams, but there is the odd sort of progress test, we call it time constrained assessment. So effectively sort of like a less formal exam. A lot of focus on not just being able to sort of write an academic piece of work, but sort of working within a business structure, and not just testing your written English, but also testing sort of the ability to sort of present those ideas in a verbal way and within group settings.
Excellent, thank you. I'm sure many students would be pleased to know there are no formal exams as such, because not many people, I guess, like them. And just to reiterate to everyone, so both MBA and MSc options are 1-year programs, so students would be able to complete their postgraduate degree within 1 year, because I can see there are some questions around the overall duration of the program. Perfect. And I guess that's what really differentiates also the postgraduate degrees in the UK. Students can complete those within a shorter period of time comparing to maybe other destinations, and then they can jump onto career ladder quicker. They can, at the same time, they can obviously secure some placements or part-time jobs during their studies, and once they've graduated, apply for post-study graduate route and secure a full-time job on graduation, which is great. I can see there were a few questions around the application process. So just to reiterate to everyone, obviously, if you are a student and you are applying via educational agencies, do get in touch with your educational agency. They will be able to guide you how to submit application and what the steps that involved. If you are an educational agency and you work with us, you would need to submit your students' applications via GAS Gateway. So that's ultimately our portal for applications, and then our admissions would pick it up from there. And current turnaround time, so within 2 to 5 working days, your case would be assessed and the initial letter would be issued for your students, so you can see what outstanding documents are still required. You would then need to obviously ensure students are prepared, in a sense they would obviously would need to do research on the university, they would need to understand the financial side of things, and obviously they need to have a clear understanding on their future plans, and book a consultation with one of my team members, again via your educational agency or depending how you obviously submitted your application. Once that is completed and you've passed your consultation session, amazing, we will then process your case to unconditional offer letter to the university. And once you've received your unconditional offer letter, we do urge you to start booking your precast interview as soon as possible. As the volume increases, the university may start asking for initial deposits to be paid prior to even booking your precast interview. So we do encourage you to book your precast interviews at the soonest, because again, like I mentioned, the obviously availability of slots is limited. It's still there, but it's getting limited by day because the volume is increasing. So we do encourage you to provide anything you still need to submit, outstanding documents, consultations, book precast interview, or arrange your deposit payment, followed by CAS request submission at the soonest. Please do not wait till summer, because like I mentioned, since the university has started issuing CASs already, and there might be a huge volume of CAS requests coming through already, meaning the deadlines may change and may be brought forward. And also, applying for your visa 6 months prior to the start date is obviously allowed by the UKVI once you've secured your CAS letter, but also it gives you sufficient time to get your accommodation arranged, get your visa issued without having to pay extra for priority services, and also obviously book your flights well in advance so you don't have to spend too much money booking them last minute. All right, I think we've covered most of questions here. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Stephen, perhaps from your side? I can see you're busy typing all the answers to various
No, I was just reviewing through a number of the questions. I'm not going to get a chance to answer, but they're information that exists on our website and that your representative will be able to support you with, but they're very difficult to answer because they're bespoke to you as an individual. So things with regard to entry requirements, English language, experience, etc., are all listed on our program website, as are our fees. So just make sure you've had a look at those programs. It's really easy to find. So if you're looking at the MBA, go onto Google, go onto Google, other searches are available. Type in CCCU MBA, CCCU MSc International Business, CCCU BSc Business Management, and it will take you directly to the page you're looking for. They're very clear tabs across the top: fees, entry requirements, module content. You'll also find a lot more information on there. Couple of things that are important: accommodation is now open. You can start booking your accommodation. I've just typed a response to a question in the chat there, but for £100 you can reserve your room, safe in the knowledge that if you change your mind and you don't join us, you can have your £100 back. It's fully refundable, but it does reserve you the room you want as soon as you hold your unconditional firm offer. So if you haven't accepted yet, log on and check your My Record. If you are an applicant or a representative that has applicants, please, I can't stress enough, get them to check their My Record almost daily. If they're waiting for something, if they're missing something, if they've got a question of why hasn't this happened, check My Record. It's a traffic light system. So you will see big red flags there of things you've got to look at, or green is all good, or amber, you've got something you need to review. So please, if you've got red in your My Record, that's a call to action. You need to do something. If you are waiting for something and everything in your My Record is green, let Dagina or her team know, and they will be in contact with us and we will look into it for you on an individual basis. And last thing, don't pay your deposit until you're invited to, and please make sure you use your Christ Church ID.
Very, very important. Yes, can't stress it enough. You need to use your Canterbury Christ Church University student ID, which is specified within your unconditional offer letter. Until you actually have received your unconditional offer letter with your Canterbury Christ Church University ID, please do not proceed with your deposit payment using any other IDs. It has to be that specific ID we've just mentioned. And another thing to note, if for any reason you're not able to book your precast interview via the portal, if it doesn't allow you, maybe some technical glitches, please do reach out to your advisor so we can support you at the soonest and obviously accommodate your precast interview at the earliest possible date, so you can then start applying for your CAS as soon as possible. Well, thank you so much once again, Richard. Really useful information. Thank you, Stephen, for your support as well. And thank you to Kasha, Chandni, and Anand for helping to run this webinar. Thank you to all attendees. The recording and presentation will be shared with you. Stay tuned for more webinars to come. We run webinars almost on a weekly basis. So keep an eye on further invites for the webinars. And I guess if you are a student, we can't wait to welcome you at Canterbury Christ Church University very, very soon. Have a great day, everyone. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye.